Occupy Wall Street has now entered its fourth week of demonstrations, and this movement has now blazed across this nation in 45 states, 200 cities. And over the past few weeks, many well-known names have thrown their support behind the movement, including my current guest, rapper, activist, and revolutionary Immortal Technique. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me on the program.
Within the first few weeks, you came down here to speak to the crowd. From what I understand, you were very bothered by the fact that this movement was being marginalized.
Right.
Now, fourth week into it, mainstream media is down here. We see all these satellite trucks around. Why do you think they have begun to report about what is taking place here and throughout the country?
Well, you know, there's an old phrase in the media, if it bleeds, it leads. You know, the more shocking, the more outrageous it is, the more that they want coverage because they know that other stations, the smaller media outlets, the blogging sites, those sites that may not be necessarily mainstream media but have the attention of millions of viewers are starting to actually pay attention to what's going on here, which is one of the biggest expressions of democracy in the past few decades here in America. And I think that when that is clear and present in front of everyone to see, it becomes blatantly obvious to some of the larger media centers that they're not even giving an ounce of coverage to it. It makes them look even more biased than they already are.
I think the tipping point might have been the arrest, the mass arrest of nearly 800 peaceful protesters on the Brooklyn Bridge that took place. I know you've been very outspoken about it.
That and the police brutality. I think that very much when it hit the internet became viral because you saw a bunch of defenseless people that were simply expressing their freedom to speak their mind in a public place. Then they were penned off, then they were sprayed down. They were obviously not in danger of harming any police officers. And then all of a sudden you see white shirts coming out more and more often and seemingly unable to be held responsible for anything that they do, almost as if they're above the law. And that is very exemplary of exactly what has continued to fuel the fire here at this protest. The fact that people that are on Wall Street, people that are in government, are refusing, or I should say, not say all of them, but a lot of them are refusing to acknowledge their responsibility in what caused all of this. You know, this didn't come from nowhere. People didn't just decide to get up and be angry about nothing. People are seriously concerned about the direction that our democracy is going.
I want to ask you about something that New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg said about this demonstration. He said that these protesters are trying to destroy the jobs of working people in New York City. Mayor Michael Bloomberg said that this demonstration is not productive. Do you think that this is an illustration of disconnect? What do you think about this?
No, I think that's a perfect illustration of a connect, his connect to Wall Street. Bloomberg is what, 75% or about owner of Bloomberg LLC. He has a $16 billion stake or so down there at Wall Street. This is his nest egg. So of course he feels threatened and he's going to do whatever he can, including making the police more and more confrontational to elicit the type of negative response that he wants from these protesters. He wants to goad them into violence. He wants to make them argue amongst one another. He wants to find issues of race, religion, sexual orientation, whatever he possibly can, him and people like him, to exploit people that are coming here who simply want to express themselves. How is this anything but a democratic expression of freedom of speech? And democracy is something very alien to that fraud, Mr. Bloomberg. My question is to Mr. Bloomberg, what would you rather have us do? Follow the conservative blueprint of kicking everything upstairs, hoping that the money trickles down to us somehow? What should we do? Should we just completely ignore our God-given right to assemble here and to question our government? We're not anti-American. We love America, and we refuse to see it destroyed by the same people that have been corrupting it for the past countless number of years. I'm sick and tired of him and other individuals coming down here and claiming, oh, these protesters here because they hate America. No, if we hated America, we would leave it in people like yours' hands so it could be completely decimated, so it would have no shred of democracy. We love America, so we're making a stand here. We're making a stand in other parts of the nation so that we show people we're not willing to give up. And this is not, and I hate to, you know, this is no disrespect to Van Jones or anybody else from the left that wants to support it here, but this is not an Obama rally. I believe that there are lots of people that are willing to put up Mr. Obama's second term on the altar of democracy if he's not willing to listen to the same group of people that were honestly trying to believe in the words he was saying when he claimed that he was going to change things in this country, which haven't changed too much, honestly.
Well, this is clearly going to become a part of the 2012 election.
Absolutely.
Because this has gotten so big. It has spread so far and wide. U.S. President Barack Obama did speak about this and said he understands the frustrations of those taking part in Occupy Wall Street.
He's a part of why these frustrations are here.
Now that you see that this is coming to fruition, what makes the momentum actually affect the U.S. system? Aside from the occupations, aside from the visuals, what do people need to do?
Like I said before, these people understand the language of money. When we start costing them money, when we start bleeding them down, that's when they get the message. That's when they get it through their heads, oh my God. No, they've discovered the magic way to deal with us all. The problem here being is that I see a lot of potential. I see potential that needs to be harnessed. I see people that, I understand the reason they haven't elected leaders, but I think that there should be more spokespeople that go out and have the actual core message of this group, that realize that the corruption that has existed in this system, we can't just completely throw on Republicans. Obviously, Democrats have to carry their fair share. But I think when people look at this nation, they see Republicans completely in the hands of corporations, Democrats pandering to them nonstop. We see them also involved now through the president as part of expanding wars, expanding occupations, not standing up for human rights, you know, being blind about several global issues that are important to people here because they reflect on our democracy. What we do outside of America defines our democracy here. If it's only democracy for people in America and we say, oh, you know what, torture is illegal inside America, but it's okay for us to torture people outside of America, then really what's the standard that we're setting here?
I've seen a lot of people online suggest that this movement, if they were to take some action, should go so far as to either pull their money out of banks or stop using credit cards. I'm not promoting any ideas here while asking you this question, but it is something that has been suggested. Do you think that...
I think the second idea is a lot better than the first one.
Stop using credit cards.
I think even though we have to have a cohesive strategy to pull this together, I think that there's a lot of real brainstorming that needs to happen, because if we make one move, we need to be focused on what moves will be made against us, you know? This is a chess game, just like the United States chess game in the Middle East, where they're willing to give up a few pawns, but what they really want is pieces. They're willing to trade a few lame duck presidents, because what they really want is the main characters out of the building, you know? They're willing to trade the pawn, Bengali. Get out of here, he's a pawn, right? The other guy used to be a player, Mubarak, became a pawn. What do they want? The bishop, Gaddafi, gone. Now, they want the queen, Iran, out of there. This is a huge chess game, and don't think that they're not playing that here either. We have to not only be focused on what the next move, but what the reaction to what their reaction of our next move is. We have to think ahead of the game. Which is why I said there should be more brainstorming sessions here, and I'm not so sure if they should always be in public, because I think honestly that we're not the only ones watching this. We'd be a fool to think that there aren't people involved here or around this area that aren't sleeper cells or agents. That's not me being paranoid, that's just the truth, you know? The first black person to ever work for any Secret Service agency was Agent 800. His job was to infiltrate the movement of Marcus Garvey. If they were thinking like that back then, why wouldn't they be thinking like that here? And I think what's most important is that we don't get frustrated or angry or upset or lack the patience to be able to deal with this movement.
What do you think the difference is between the Occupy Wall Street movement and the Tea Party? Because you know there's been a lot of comparisons made between...
Okay. When people talk about the Tea Party, they think that they're a reaction to Obama. I say that this is a great mistake. The Tea Party's reaction is against its own party first. It's against the Republicans. Who were their first enemies? Before you can actually get to an election, you have to run in a primary. Who were their first enemies? Republicans that they didn't think were far enough to the right. They didn't think that their values were conservative enough, so they put them on the chopping block to show everybody out there, we are willing to get rid of our own if you do not come back home. And this is your home now. That's the difference. We're not willing to just attack people at random. We're willing to sit down and have discussions with people before we take it to that degree. They were straight out the bank, no, we're going for the jugular. Part of that, people think because we organized here and people were here, that we're just willing to politically, savagely maul anybody. It's not the case. We want to have discussions with individuals who are in charge of things. I would say this is a more all-encompassing movement.
Absolutely.
This is libertarians, this is independents, this is some Democrats, this is some Republicans, more Democrats obviously than Republicans, but because we're asking questions about foreign policy, because I don't think the majority of people here believe that a woman who's the victim of rape or incest should be forced to have a child, and we don't believe that government has the right to have all of these private meetings behind our back about what we need to do. There was a sign out here that said, police officers, you're one bounce check away from being out here with the rest of us too. Look, a lot of people, they're angry, they're screaming at cops, but you have to understand, they're just working class individuals. Who's their boss? The mayor. The mayor's getting money with Wall Street. He's closer to Wall Street than America's to Israel. You know what I mean? That's his homies. Those are his peoples. When they die, he pours out a little liquor for them. He shows up at all their birthday parties. He's probably godfather to some of their children. These people, they're like an American aristocracy. So when he says something to the police commissioner says something to the white shirts, and the white shirts kick down to the soldiers, it's similar to what we see in the most brutal parts of the occupation of Iraq and Afghanistan, the most brutal parts of that war. Soldiers held accountable for terrible things that have happened within the confines of the war, but no officers, no generals, nobody that implemented these policies, nobody that said, hey, you know what? Take him into the back and cut his hands off until he tells me what I want to hear. Or rape her till she can't stand, until she gives us the information that we want. But that's only attributed to the contractors, to the soldiers, not to the upper levels, not to the CIA memos, not to the people that wrote that. Which is why when I look at cops, there's a certain amount of cynicism that I have when people say, oh, they're all evil, they're all wicked. No, they're not evil, they're all wicked. There are people that are innocently following orders, and if they don't follow orders, they'll lose their job. Like the sign said, they're one bounce check from being right here with the rest of us too. And as soon as they realize that, and I think that's also a big difference between this movement and between the Arab Spring movements. The difference is that in the Arab Spring, there was a concentrated force of security forces, whether it be military or National Guard, that decided to join with the movement. Because those were their people. They were literally saying, wow, these are the people that I'm being told by my government that I have to go to war with other countries to protect. And yet now I'm being told to attack and kill the same people? At some point, everybody has to question what they're doing and why they're even here. What they're doing at their job, if they're being expressive of their democracy. And a greater question, what did they ever really do to be considered an American? Did you fall out of a pussy in New York or New Jersey or Kansas? That's why you're an American? Did you ever stand up for your human rights and your civil rights? Did you ever question a government that's trying to infringe on your civil liberties? Did you ever try to reform a government that's done nothing but leech this country dry? Stealing from people constantly? In 2008, this country was ready to go up in arms. Obama was not the great unifier, he was the great pacifier. He came in here and said, no, it's gonna be okay, I'm gonna take care of all this. Yeah, he took care of all of it. And this is not hatred towards him. This is not a denigration of him as a man. But he knows the system he has to stand up for because he's tied to it too, like Bloomberg is tied to Wall Street. If people come here from the opposition, people have consistently been a part of taking advantage of the people that are here, that are upset at what we're doing because it exposes what they've been doing this whole time, which exposes the corruption behind closed doors, then we know we're on the right path.
Speaking of paths, I know that you mentioned to me that you're going to be going on tour soon.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about that, because your fans are gonna
I'm a rapper
destroy me on YouTube if I don't ask you any questions about your music. This tour, when is it beginning? Where are you going? Your music? Give me an update.
On October 27th, I'm releasing a free project. A project of never before unreleased Immortal Technique tracks people have not heard. To name a few, I got Killer Mike, Dead Prez, Brother Ali, wow, a whole slew of people, Styles P, I have production from Green Lantern, Jay Dilla, Southpaw, a huge wide array of music that has just never been heard from me before. A free album, and then afterwards we're going on tour, starting in Philly on October 27th, going way down south, then over to the southwest, up and down the west coast, then we're coming back home, probably do a big show here in New York, and then you know, going right back to work. The Middle Passage coming after that album, and the project of the name of the free project is the Martyr. And I'm telling people right now that I'm going to continue to come back down here to this movement. I was here when it started. I won't be here when it finishes because it's never going to finish. This is never going to be over. To the people that are watching, that are preying on the downfall of the Occupy Wall Street movement, it won't ever be over because we can never stop reforming our democracy. The moment that we stop reforming our democracy, it ceases to be a democracy. The moment that the revolution stops, that means the revolution has been betrayed. We're here to stay, and we're not going anywhere. Immortal Technique, Occupy Wall Street, you know what it is.